My dad kept his no questions asked, just call me for help promise. My 13F dad is a good dude. He's not perfect. He'll get pissed over smaller things sometimes that I think aren't worth the trouble. He gets a bit too drunk with his co-workers occasionally and gets banished from my parents' bedroom, lol. All in all though, good dad. One thing that I've been told again and again since I was in elementary school is that if I'm ever in real trouble, he will always be there to help. I've never had to take him up on his promise until I was invited to a party a few weeks ago. Told my parents I was sleeping over at a friend's place. There were some older guys at the party and hard liquor. My friends and I will sneak the occasional beer, but it was our first time trying things like vodka and whiskey. We got really drunk and the high schoolers were being creepy. My friends really didn't want to call their parents. Kinda understandable because we were wasted at a party with boys we didn't know that well. I ended up calling my dad at like 3 a.m. He just asked for the address and immediately drove over, dropped off my two friends and then we drove home. Honestly, I thought I was in for the shout session of a lifetime. Low-key I knew I deserved it. All he did, though, was hold my hand and tell me that the world can be a dangerous place and to please make safe, smart decisions. Next morning, he acts as if nothing has happened. Apparently my dad just told my mom that I was feeling a bit sick and came home during the night, which was true because my hangover was horrible. My dad. This guy. Murder attempt survivors. What happened? Last year my neighbor plotted to kidnap and murder my wife and one. I was working from home one morning and heard a knock at the door at 8 a.m. I ignored it at first hoping whoever it was would go away. After a minute of knocking I opened the door. It was my neighbor who I had spoken with a few times. My wife was at work and I could tell he was surprised when I opened the door and not my wife. He was expecting her to be home and not me. He noticed that I recently purchased a new car and asked if I could show it to him. He tried to walk inside but I asked him to walk around to the garage because of COVID-19. I showed him the car and he was acting strange. Always kept one hand in his pocket. My garage is very small so we were in close proximity to each other. He kept inching closer to me which made me uncomfortable. He brought a open Coke bottle, filled with a tan liquid, and said I brought you a Coke. I declined the offer. After a few minutes he asked if he could see my gauge cluster. We walked around to the driver's side and I sat in the driver's seat to turn on the car and show him the gauge cluster. With door open, there was very little room besides the side of the car and the garage wall. After turning on the car he pulled a large hunting knife to my neck. I immediately grabbed his wrist and slammed him back into the wall. At this point we are wrestling between the car and wall as I try to get the knife away from him. During this 30 seconds period, it seems like an absolute miracle that I was not stabbed. The blade grazed past my stomach multiple times. I was eventually able to grab the knife and force him out into the driveway. Immediately after grabbing the knife he started saying, "What are you doing?" I was just trying to show you my knife, and acting like I had just assaulted him. I was in such a state of shock that I actually started to believe him and wondered if I had overreacted. I know this seems ridiculous but I was completely delusional at the time and did not know what his intentions were. I stood in the driveway, hands shaking, with 911 dialed on my phone but did not make the call. He acted like nothing just happened and started asking my questions. Really suspicious questions. "Do you have a security system?" I lied and said yes. I asked him to go home multiple times and eventually went back inside the house but did not shut the main garage door. At this point I needed to drive into work and started getting ready, showering, getting dressed, etc. I assumed he had just walked back home. After getting ready I went outside and walked around the house to the garage with a can of bear mace. I searched around the garage and was worried he was still there. As I started to get into my car and leave, I saw my neighbor laying down behind some boxes in the garage, staring at me. I yelled and ran as fast I could back to the front door and called the cops. Cops arrived quickly and my neighbor had disappeared. They searched around his house and mine but could not find him. They said they would stay in the area but were going to leave for now. My house is surrounded by woods and I have a large back porch. Frightened, I stood in the middle of the porch while holding bear mace. I looked around and noticed my neighbor hiding in the woods staring at me. I ran back inside and called the cops. Cops arrived quickly and pulled guns on my neighbor and arrested him. He later said I was just trying to scare him. They found a knife, zip ties, vodka, and a note on him that read, "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." He was there to murder me or my wife. He was charged with 3 felony counts and is currently awaiting.
There's someone pretending to be my sister downstairs in my house. It has her voice, but I don't think it's really her. Bye, Eddie. My mother calls up to me from downstairs. I take my rightmost headphone off my ear, and I pick up the sound of the general bustle in the downstairs hallway. I can hear my dad and my sister laughing to each other as coats are taken from the rack. Bye. I call back, keeping my eyes fixed on the screen. The game goes on. Are you sure you don't want to come? My mom calls up, it could be fun. Fun family outing. I roll my eyes. I'm good, Mom. Bye. My sister calls up too. Come on, Eddie. Don't sit around in the house like a loser all day. Goodbye. I shout down again. All right, see you soon. My mom replies. Later, loser. Louise calls, though it's good-natured, really. We do get on. I can hear Mom gently chiding her, though I can't make out the words. I sure do recognize that tone, though. Their voices fade out and the footsteps soften. The front door is drawn closed. I hear the sound of my mom locking the door up behind her. Awesome. Some peace, at last. Don't have to worry about anyone barging in and interrupting. I return my headphone to my ear and reinvest my full attention to the matter at hand. Securing a victory. Gotta keep my current ranking. A second loss in a row and my score will tank. Can't afford that right now. Click, click, click. I tap away at the keys. Explosions rattle in my ears as I navigate the environment. Fully engrossed, muscle tensed as I do my best. At last bringing the round to a close. I clap my hands in victory and lean back, the chair squeaking as I do so. I slide off my headphones and take a moment to revel in the victory, listening to the soft patter of the rain against the window. The day is gray and overcast. Wind sighs gently in the trees on the street outside. I glance at the clock. Damn, it's been almost an hour already. How time flies. I spin around in my chair, drumming my fingers against the desk. I catch a quick reflection of myself in the screen as it loads. Sat at my computer, just like you probably are right now. Or maybe you're on your phone. Same difference. Connected, engaged, and yet, for now, alone. The rain patters, and the game freezes. The loading circle becomes stuck mid-turn. I try to shake the mouse, but that too has become frozen. Fuck's sake, I mutter, tapping the S key. Nothing. HM. It's as I'm going for Control plus Alt plus Delete that I hear a noise from downstairs. Sounded like a cupboard door being shut. Instantly I find myself suppressing a wave of panic. It's fascinating, really, how quickly one's level of alertness can change. All my senses are primed and I become hyper-aware of the sound of my breathing, of the beating of my heart. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe the sound was something else. Did it come from outside? But as I listen, it comes again. Another cupboard, and then, what sounds like the fridge. It's okay, don't panic. Don't panic. Serial killers don't go looking through cupboards and fridges, do they? I creep to my door and slowly, gently, steadily ease it open, slipping out into the corridor and tiptoeing to the banisters of the stairs, listening out for some more clues. I hold my breath, and then, as I hear water start flowing into the sink, I allow myself to relax a little. Killers don't wash their hands before a murder. What would be the point? I'm summoning the courage to call down when I hear a voice call up first. All my tensions are relaxed at once, as the voice is my sister's. Hi Eddie, I've got some food for you down here. I call back, oh great. Did you stop at the cookie place on your way back? Please tell me you got the caramel ones. There is a pause. Come down and see. She replies, as I hear stuff being moved about on the counter. Alright, give me a sec. I shout down, heading back into my room to force restart my computer. I take another look at the clock. I think to myself, they haven't been out very long. I wonder why they came back. Maybe the rain. I press and hold down the power button then return through my door to the top of the stairs. How come you guys are back so early? I call out. There is no response. The door to my parents' room is open. I glance through it to see the rain wash gently down the window at the room's far side. For some reason unknown to me at this stage, unease creeps quietly into the back of my head. Louise, I call down, still hesitating by the banisters. Where's Mom and Dad? There is another silence. I walk the length of the hallway, passing by a little window to the street outside. My parents' car, it would seem, has not returned. I continue on until I am stood at the top of the stairs, looking down them and into the hall below. The lights are all still switched off, and an unsettling aura seeps up the steps from the shadows beneath. Come on down, Eddie, comes my sister's voice from somewhere unseen. The kitchen, I think. Come see what I have for you. I cannot hear the sound of cupboards, now. There is no rustling, no movement of any objects or bags or jingling of keys. My sister finishes speaking, and then there is silence. Silence, and the gentle patter of the rain. My hands, I realize, are sweating. What the hell is this? I think to myself, Eddie, come on man, just pull yourself together. But something compels me to remain where I stand. Some unseen force keeps me from taking a step down onto the stairs and descending to the bottom floor. Louise, I try to call back, but my voice fails me. It does not project the way I intended. I clear my throat, though my mouth has dried. The sensation is an uncomfortable one. Eddie, comes the reply. Eddie, come downstairs. When did you get back? I manage to call down, where's the car? Silence. Louise. I call down again, unsure of what else to say. And then, a moment later, from around the corner, my sister walks slowly and deliberately into view. She stops at the bottom of the stairs, still shrouded in shadow, and she looks up to me. We hold each other's gaze for a moment, her at the base of the steps, and I at the top. She does not speak, and her expression shifts to a wide grin. Her teeth appear very white in the darkness. She makes a quick motion with one of her hands. Follow, is the implication, and then she turns and walks slowly back to the kitchen, out of sight. It is not until I cannot see her that her voice comes again. Come on, Eddie. Come and see what I have to show you. The hairs on the back of my neck all raise in cold alarm. I do not follow. With my jaw clenched and blood frozen in my veins, I make a hasty retreat to my room where I close the door shut, perhaps just a little too quickly. The thud of the door going into its frame reverberates around the walls. Less than 1 second later, in that exact same instant, I hear the unmistakable sound of something barreling up the stairs, knocking carelessly into the banisters with rapid, ascending creaks and clamoring. I cry out loud in terror, and with a surge of adrenaline I grab hold of my chest of drawers. I haul it across the floor into place, blocking the door. My potted plant falls and lands with a dull thump by my feet, soil spilling out across the carpet. My heart hammers in my chest as I stare at the door, tensed and waiting for the handle to start rattling. waiting for something to throw itself against the door from the opposite side. My sister. But none of those things happen. The minutes tick by, excruciatingly slowly. The sounds of the sudden race up the stairs ended as quickly as they began, and with the utmost caution, I tentatively pressed my ear against the wood, listening, breathing deep, straining to hear for any sign or clue as to what the fuck is going on. "Open the door, Eddie," my sister's voice whispers from the other side. I leap back from the door in horror, fumbling around on my desk for my phone, too afraid to look away. I grab it and tap in the passcode, my shaking fingers failing the password the first time. In the second, the thing on the other side of the door does not knock. It does not try to force its way in. It only repeats itself. "Eddie, stop screwing around. Open the door and let me in. I have something to show you." I try to call my mom first. I bring the phone up to my ear, shaking. The line is engaged. "Fuck. Come on, Eddie, open the door. I want to show you something." "Louise," I reply at last, my voice trembling. "You're freaking me the fuck out. If this is a prank, just stop, okay? Just stop. Open the door, Eddie. Open up and let me in. You need to see this, please, come with me. Please, if it's a prank, I forgive you, just stop messing with me." Silence, and then, "Just come downstairs. You need to come downstairs with me. Just follow. Screw this." Next up, I call the police. An overreaction, perhaps, but better safe than sorry. The tone sounds through the phone, there's a click, then, "911, what's your emergency?" I take a deep breath. "Hello?" 911 comes through the phone. "There's an intruder in my house," I whisper at last, as quietly as I can, though evidently my sister hears. Her voice has risen in pitch. I don't think she likes this development. "Eddie, you need to open the door. Let me in. You need to open the door. You need to open the door. Let me in. This is really important. Really important." Something about the way she says those final words sets my teeth on edge. It wasn't slurred as such. Just, ugh. I don't know how to describe it. As if the muscles for her speech, I guess, were getting tired. But despite my fear, I do my best to ignore her, and I provide my details to the person on the line. The rain starts hammering down against the glass, and the wind picks up too. "Okay, sir," they say after I have told them my location. "A car will be with you shortly. Please stay on the line." I do so, keeping as far away from my bedroom door as I can, terrified that at any moment the person with my sister's voice is going to barge through. "Eddie," she shouts, making me jump. "Eddie, you need to let me in. You need to come with me." I swear that I hear a car drive past outside, and I turn to look through the rain-washed window. And as I do so, my heart nearly stops in my chest. Down there at the side of the road, standing in the rain and looking up into my window, right at me, is my family. My mom, my dad, and Louise, just standing in a line, hands by their sides, staring up at me, staring up into my window. And they are all smiling, all grinning that same, chilling grin, looking up at me, unblinking. The police arrived about 10 minutes after that, and they had a hell of a time calming me down. I never heard my sister leave from behind the doorway, though the officers didn't find anyone, even after a thorough search of the house. My family outside vanished after I briefly turned away. 1 minute they were there, and the next, gone. My mother nearly had a panic attack of her own when she came home to find cop cars parked up outside. Louise had no idea what the hell I was talking about, none of them did, and she insisted she wasn't playing any kind of prank. She can be annoying at times, but still, I really can't see her doing anything like this. I can't see any of them doing something like this. I had to wait to see their mouths move in time to their speech before I could even begin to let my guard down. Also, it's been about a month since this incident. I have a lock on my door now, and I haven't seen or heard anything quite so terrifying since. But I still get angsty at night, and hell, who wouldn't? And I tell you what else, too. When my family are heading out and they ask if I want to go along. These days, I say yes.
2-sentence horror. I'd like to order a large pepperoni pizza. Why I hung up the phone, exasperated that scam calls were cutting into my time, responding to actual 911 emergencies. I assumed the cute guy I hooked up with at the party was joking when he told me he was an alien. But the joke was on me, because a pregnancy, let alone one that has lasted 19 months so far, is not something I ever expected to have to deal with as a gay man. She awoke feeling too warm, wet and itchy, so she shook until she was dry and had removed most of her fleas. Then Earth returned to sleep. This morning Daddy yelled at me for playing doctor, but I think he's just grumpy since he's had that cold. He started coughing as he crammed all my toys back under the sink, and then he laid down on the floor for a nap, but I know he'll wake up feeling better soon since I put all that medicine in his coffee. The Mayans' 2012 calendar wasn't a prophecy of the world ending. It was a strong suggestion. After the Christian rapture happened to everyone's considerable shock, those left behind and those born to them after all had a strange, unremovable marking appear on their foreheads. It took decades to translate, but the result was horrifying. Do not harvest, not fit for consumption.
This will be the last dinner I have with my family. My wife, Sarah, had been with me for 10 beautiful years. I've always told her I wouldn't know what I would do without her, and she always said she felt the same. It was like we shared one mind when it came to how we love each other. This became more apparent when we raised our 2 rambunctious kids. Our home was always filled with the sound of laughter. This is why we didn't let the kids know when I got diagnosed with cancer. Terminal, the doctor said. It sucks how even people in their 30s get a diagnosis like that. Rather than slowly crumbling and wasting away in a hospital bed, I chose to stay at home. Home, where the warmth of my family will replace the darkness I feel. It's been a couple months already and I fear I'm near the end. Every breath is now a struggle and every movement feels forced. My children have told me I've been looking sick as they played nurse in our room. They said I'll be fine as long as I drank water and the pieces of candy they gave me that they called medicine. I didn't have the heart to tell them, no, Daddy won't be. My mind is filled with all the responsibilities I leave behind when I'm gone. How will Sarah be able to feed herself and the kids? Will she be able to afford rent? We burn through a lot of cash for my meds and hospital visits. One thing I also think about is how she is a great mother, but really, I was the one who took care of the kids. I asked Sarah to help me prepare dinner one last time while I can still move my body. It was really a breeze for her, but it was hell for me. I felt too weak to do most of the tasks and the heat was searing. I only added some ingredients while she was off chopping, mixing, and garnishing. When we finished, we didn't even have to call the kids. The aroma that wafted throughout the house was enough to get them out of their rooms and into the dining. I nearly cried when we sat down because it felt like it was one of the thousands of mundane dinners we had before I got sick. I could see the smiles and excitement of my kids looking at the meal we prepared as I held my wife's hand. As we were about to eat, I told her the words already long engraved in my heart. I don't know what I would do without you. Her unknowing me too was all I needed to know my life had been good and I had done the right things. I then watched my family dive into the last meal I was able to cook, and I can only hope the arsenic I mixed in was enough. I couldn't believe what my boss asked me to do on my first day. There's nothing to get. My manager Jonah swept his palm against the mahogany reception desk. It's right, left. I watched him go through the motions for what seemed like the 20th time. It wasn't my fault. This wasn't something I got asked to do every day. In fact, I'd never expected to get asked to do this, period. Especially not on my first day on the job. Okay, I said, taking in a lungful of air and extending my arms to either side. Right, left. Got it. His forehead cleared. See. Easy peasy. You'll be running this place by the end of the week. The end of the week seemed light years away. The newspaper ad had promised a stress-free receptionist experience in a small health clinic, but it was only 9 a.m. and I was already on edge. Jonah looked to be in his late 40s and evidently took pride in his no-nonsense attitude. He was already tapping his foot by the time I'd arrived, even though I was 5 minutes early and wasted no time on introductions. I have a meeting in 10, he snapped, pointing me to my seat. That's your desk. Your login info is on the post-it note. Anything else you might need, just ask Sally. She'll be taking over for the night shift. The night SH. I tried to interject, but he cut me off. Let me walk you through the basics. He paused for effect. As you know, we pride ourselves on our free healthcare, which distinguishes us from the competition and keeps our hands full day and night. Your role may be simple, but it's a vital one. Okay, I shifted on my swivel chair as he positioned himself directly in front of the reception desk. Now, he cleared his throat. Pay attention. You'll need to master this before the next surge. Sir, I began, but he wasn't listening. So, the first thing you do when a patient comes in is check their ID. Free healthcare or not, we need to keep a record of whoever comes through the door. You know the drill. He wrapped the countertop in a keyboard-like motion to demonstrate. I smiled politely. Now, the important part, he said, extending his arms to the sides. As you can see, there is a door on each side of the room. For your convenience, they are labeled R and L, which stand for right and left. He paused, as if to make sure I was still following. The task is simple. You are to send every 5th patient through the left door. You'll need to keep track of them. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 people go right, and the 5th one goes left. But why? I heard myself asking. In all my years working as a hospital receptionist, I'd never heard a request like this. What's behind the left door? Jonah scoffed, as if he'd been expecting the question. Inpatient rooms. Don't worry about it. All you need to do is count the patients and point to the correct door. Got it. So, I began, my mouth dry, but what kind of? How will I know if the patients qualify for the left door? You know, like, if a pregnant woman comes in and the maternity rooms are on the right. Easy, he snapped, his brow furrowed. If she's patient number 5, you send her to the left. I don't care about the circumstances. I swallowed. Well, can I have a tour of the premises? Or, Jonah's head jerked. You don't need to worry about the ins and outs of it. You're a receptionist. We're paying you good money to do this job. Take it or leave it. I took it. I couldn't even believe I had been lucky enough to get it in the first place. Hospital work had been too taxing, and making double while doing a far easier job sounded almost too good to be true. By the time Jonah had disappeared through the door labeled R, the reception area was already flooded with patients. I've been vomiting since 2 a.m., a man in a blue tracksuit stated, tossing an ID card into my hands. I need some pills or something. He dry heaved, clutching his throat dramatically while I took down his information. Go through the right door, I said with a smile. I leaned forward in my seat, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was behind it, but as the man in the tracksuit pulled it open, I was disappointed to discover it was no more than a long white corridor. I only saw that same corridor the following 3 times too. There was no sign of the people I'd just sent in, nor were there any benches or a waiting area for patients to sit. Good morning. An elderly man placed his passport onto the countertop. I've got an ear infection. Started last week. Tried warm compresses and pain medication, but it's staying put. Is there a doctor I could see for a prescription? I stared at him, gnawing at my lip. He was the 5th patient. Is everything okay? He cocked his head to the side, his eyes blue and watery. I cleared my throat, hurriedly punching in his surname. It's the left door, please, sir. With bated breath, I watched as he struggled towards it, eventually managing to pry it open. It was exactly the same. A white, sterile-looking corridor, no different from the one on the right. No people, no benches, only bright, fluorescent lights. Still, I couldn't help myself from feeling slightly nauseated as the door slammed shut behind him, my heart somersaulting in my chest. Next, please, I croaked, trying my best to distract myself. What was this system for? Why were they singling out these unsuspecting people, and more importantly, a documentary I'd seen a month prior flashed before my eyes. Cruel medical experiments involving. No, I couldn't allow myself to think about that. I just needed to get through the day and then I'd see. Research this place, ask around. Why on earth hadn't I thought to do that the night before? Hell, why hadn't I done that before applying for the job? Only now it dawned on me how quickly they had hired me. Had they even checked my qualifications? Did Jonah even know my name? God, I wanted to bury my face in my hands, but the next patient was already staring me down, a baby in her arms. We need a pediatrician, she wailed. My son hasn't slept in 3 days and I'm exhausted. The baby looked hot and uncomfortable, writhing in her arms while I took down their names. It's the door on the right, I pointed to it, suddenly realizing that I hadn't considered this scenario. Did that count as 2 people ... or 1 patient? And how exactly could I split a child from their parent? I'd need to ask Jonah whenever I saw him next. Except I didn't see Jonah. I didn't even see my lunch or a bathroom break. It occurred to me, a little too late, that I hadn't thought to ask where anything is. Jonah had explained the premise of the job and disappeared, never to be seen again. I would have considered trying one of the doors, but the queue was unrelenting and I constantly found myself swarmed by people. By the afternoon, I had sent about 100 patients through the right door and 20 patients through the left. I recalled each one of them with perfect clarity. Thomas, the elderly gentleman, Beatrice, the teen girl with the nose ring, Lou, the woman in the tartan dress, Gabriel. Excuse me. A small voice rang out, can you help me? At first, I didn't realize where the voice was coming from, much less that it was addressing me. My head was reeling from the bright lights and my own unrelenting thoughts. Ma'am, the voice piped up again, and this time a skinny arm appeared from behind the counter. It was a boy, no older than 7. With brown disheveled hair falling over his forehead and a sling on his left arm. I'm here for my x-ray, he said, holding his arm out for me to see. Could you show me where to go? I looked down at the tally I'd been keeping on my post-it. 104. My blood ran cold. It was there and then that I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't do this job. How was I meant to send a child, or any person for that matter, through a mystery door? It felt like a betrayal, a sacrifice. No, could you show me where to go? The boy repeated, disrupting my inner monologue. My mother is waiting for me in the car. It's ... it's. I garbled, trying to compose myself. Thoughts of brutal experiments flooded my mind again. My skin was prickling all over. I needed to do the right thing. I needed to. It's the right door, I whispered. My heart was pounding in my chest and I could feel a bead of sweat making its way down the small of my back. It didn't matter if I got into trouble. I couldn't risk it. Okay, the boy shrugged, making his way towards it. Fighting the golf ball-sized lump in my throat, I rushed in front of him to open it. Thank you. I felt better after that. Well, relatively. You see, I started cheating. There were no surveillance cameras in the reception area, so I allowed myself to work at twice the speed, but sent twice as few people through the left door. No one will notice, I told myself over and over, clacking furiously at my keyboard. And this way I got to actually pick the people manually. There was the lady who grumbled about the waiting times, and then the man who thought it was appropriate to smoke inside. Who are you? A voice intercepted my thoughts. A woman had circled the counter and was standing beside me, casually shifting papers on my desk. Hey, I began, grabbing at them. Where's Penelope? Her gaze was piercing. T. Penelope. I stammered, I don't. Who's Penelope? Oh, God. The woman slumped down, burying her face in her hands. Not another one. I stared at her, wondering if this was her way of telling me she needed the psych ward. Ma'am, if you'd like to see a doctor, I'll need your ID, please, I said, watching her shoulders bob up and down in a silent cry. She shot me an incredulous look. I'm Sally. Here for the night shift. Penelope was the one before you. I told her not to go snooping. I told her to just do her job. She wouldn't listen. I felt a chill crawling up my spine. What happened? But Sally shook her head. I don't know. I certainly have my theories. It's not the first time this has happened. They were Shirley and Jacob, and now Penelope. Oh, it's the right door, sir. Out of the corner of my eye I saw a man spin on his heel and head toward the right-hand side of the room. Please, my mouth was as dry as a cotton ball. I need to know. Sally slapped the countertop. Okay, we're on break, people. 15 minutes. Tell me what's going on, I said, as soon as she turned away from the reception desk. What's behind the left door? Behind the left door. Hell if I know. I haven't been there and wouldn't go if they paid me. Ignorance really is bliss, never forget that. But you must know something. How long have you been working here? She chuckled. You know how curiosity killed the cat. Well, that expression really applies here. Once the other receptionists made up their minds to wander down one of the corridors, I never saw them again. Came into a brand new person the next day. Did they get fired? Fired? Her eyes widened. Honey, I hope they got fired. All I know is that they never showed up again. Wouldn't pick up their phones either. Dawned, just like that. I shook my head. Tell me what's behind the left door. You must know. She studied me for a moment with narrowed eyes. It's ... It's not the left door you should be worried about. My heart skipped a beat. It's not. Then, the lucky ones get the left door, Sally said, her voice hoarse. I don't understand, I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. The left door people, she said, grabbing hold of my clammy hands. I've seen them again. They're registered in the system twice, some even 3 times if they're exceedingly lucky. They make further appointments. They leave us good reviews. I swallowed, but not the right door people. She pointed her painted fingernail towards the window. You see that truck over there? The one the men are loading up. All that comes from the right wing. But that's that's one of the biggest fast food chains in the city. I know. I gaped at her, my stomach churning. The right door. She nodded sorrowfully. Nothing's free, sweetheart. The company's got to make their money somehow, and... But before she could finish her sentence, Jonah stuck his head out the door, a paper bag in his hand. Hey, ladies, fancy having some lunch? I stared at him, and then at Sally, silently shaking her head.
The monster knows I'm not sleeping. A yawn wakes me from a deep sleep. I used to have a sleeping so intense that even a bomb blast wouldn't wake me up. Since he's been here, my sleep can be easily disturbed. The monster woke up, and I know what that means. He comes to check on me to see if I'm sleeping or not. With all my strength, I pretend to sleep. It mustn't occur to him that I'm not asleep, and I know about him. But I'm afraid he knows. His steps tend to be soft, almost inaudible. But at night, when all the sounds are louder, they are frighteningly noisy. He stops near me. His loud breath reaches me. He watches me for a moment and then moves away slowly. I try to keep my breathing slowly so that it resembles the breathing of a sleeping person. There is a loud drinking of water coming from the kitchen. He's panting. He's probably been thirsty too much. I can also hear the sound of drops hitting the floor. He always makes a mess when he drinks water. Grave silence reigns for a while, and I wonder what he must be thinking. He ran. I can hear him picking something up off the ground in the distance. No. He's dragging something on the floor. He's getting closer. He sighs and probably sits up. His fangs began to crush something so loud that it echoed all around. Here it is. He's at full strength, fully conscious. The sound that pricks my ears, even stirs my heart is the sound of bone crushing by his sharp fangs. I don't know how long I can fake it. My body is in spasm. I need to move, but it gets his attention. What should I do? He's the brightest and most intelligent hunter. I'm thinking so hard that my breathing has quickened. I prick up my ears and realize, horrified, that the bone crushing has quieted. I hold my breath, but I'm afraid it's too late. I can hear him breathing deeply. I can feel him watching me as a beast watches his prey. He moved and immediately stopped. He's probably considering his next move. He ran and jumped on the bed. He landed on my feet, and they hurt horribly. It was almost impossible not to react, but I didn't move. But I couldn't hold my breath. I gasped, and it scared me. He slowly creeps up to my head. His mouth is open, and there is a strong smell of crushed bone. His body is unnaturally muscular, probably from hunting so much. His fur is soft but hides rough bristles that dig into my skin. His moist nose touches my nose. His wet and harsh tongue ran over my face, and I couldn't hold it anymore. I lost that fight. Are you ready to play? I said with a laugh. I open my eyes and see my dog's gaze waiting for me to start playing. My wife and I were ecstatic when the second baby came out, as we were only expecting one. Almost 10 hours and 35 newborns later, ecstatic was far from what we were feeling. In some places if you shine a flashlight into grass at night you'll see thousands of little lights, each one the eyes of various spiders and insects. It turns out that stars are pretty much the same thing. My 4-year-old kept telling me and my wife about the roof fur, which I assumed was moss. Coroner's report, cause of death, acute poisoning due to gut filled with fiberglass insulation. It was a long and hard 6 months, but I finally beat my addiction. One last time wouldn't hurt, and I do deserve it for being clean for so long. After putting 2 rounds into the knife-wielding figure that had cornered me in the alley, I saw teenagers with their phones out running over to help. The ringing in my ears was so loud, I could barely make out the words. It was just a prank. If you take the red pill, you become a millionaire, but we kill the baby if you take the blue pill gosh it's been so long since someone picked blue I can't remember what it does.
My parents won't stop screaming at me. I always try to do what my parents ask of me. I keep my elbows off the table and don't speak with food in my mouth. I study hard at school and avoid conflicts when they arise. They would rarely ever raise their voices at me. Just that one time I broke Aunt Esther's expensive vase, and that other time I ran out into the road to get my ball. I was scolded until I cried, my face red and cheeks wet with tears. I promised to be careful, and they eventually told me they loved me. They said they were just worried about my safety, and they apologized for raising their voices. They kissed my forehead and told me it was fine. I promised to look both ways and to never cross without their permission. I not only promised, but I followed through, making sure the road was clear when I crossed the street to play in the park. I did everything that was asked, but one day, a car appeared out of nowhere. It was going too fast to stop, despite the screeching tires as the driver slammed down the brakes. My parents wept as they looked down at me. Dad turned his head to puke. I tried to tell them I was okay, but they kept crying and Mom kept screaming, "My baby, they killed my baby." I couldn't move when a strange man in an apron pumped something thick into my blood on that metal table. I couldn't move when I was placed into a cushioned box. I couldn't move when everyone gathered to talk about me at church, and then they lowered me into the ground. After the lid was closed and the dirt thumped the box's lid, I could still hear my parents from up above. They said it was unfair. They couldn't let go of me. Mom cried for me to come back. She begged me to, and I started to gather my strength. It took weeks, but I eventually clawed through that box's wooden lid. I crawled up through the damp, wormy soil. I crawled all the way back home, my twisted legs unable to carry me. I came back, just like they wanted. I crawled up the stairs and into their room to show them. I raised my heavy head and dangling jaw, and I smiled. I expected them to be so proud of me, but they don't look happy at all. They look more terrified than they ever have before. Worst of all, even though I did just what they asked, my parents won't stop screaming at me.
Babysitting rules. Hello blank. We are so glad that you agreed to babysit our daughter tonight. Now there's some rules you must follow at our home for your own safety. We always want our babysitters to stay safe, of course. The list is as following. 1. Make sure you arrive at 4 p.m. and no later. You won't be able to enter the house any later. If you arrive later and try to enter the house, the door will eat you. 2. Our daughter is still young and so she will ask about the shadow creatures. Tell her they don't exist. We don't want her to worry or try to interact with them. 3. If a shadow creature tries to approach you, make sure to stay in a well-lit room. It will get bored eventually and leave. If the room you stay in is not properly lit, they will be able to reach you. When they reach you, they will take over your body and leave your soul left in the house. Do not let this happen, for you still have to protect our daughter. 4. The oven is strange and likes to act up. If it's having an episode, do not use it or the hot air inside will escape and melt your skin off the bone. Any other time you are free to use it, but do be kind to it. 5. Our daughter likes dolls. She will ask you to play with her. Saying yes is your only option in this situation. Once you find a spot to play, she will offer you to choose your doll. Never choose the doll in the red dress. We call this doll Emily and she is very dangerous. Emily likes our daughter and won't attack her, but the same does not apply to you, and so whatever hand you hold her in she will eat, so you would be losing a hand permanently. 6. If we come home early, take our daughter and hide somewhere safe such as the closet or our bedroom and lock the door. These people are not us and are devious tricksters. If you're caught by them, they will make you into dinner. 7. Protect our daughter at any cost, even if you must sacrifice yourself. We will tell your family if you die on the job and they will be compensated for it. If you fail at protecting her, you will have to deal with us and we won't be happy. 8. The landline will ring throughout the night or fall off the line. If this happens, simply put it back on the line or ignore it. In the case that you pick up the phone, it will start making rasping or buzzing sounds. These sounds can drive you to insanity, in which you will kill yourself. 9. Our room is the safest room in the house. The monsters don't enter it and prefer to avoid it. You can't stay there all night because if you stay too long, Charles will wake up. You don't want Charles to wake up because when he wakes up, he's of course hungry. He will eat you and our daughter. 10. Don't go into the basement. The basement residents enjoy their privacy and don't like guests. In any case, you must go down there, knock on the door and ask to come in. If they say yes, go down and do what you need to do, then leave. If you don't knock, they will become angered and will throw you into the tumble dryer until you die. 11. You may leave in the morning once we return. If you leave before then for whatever reason, well, you're most likely already dead. These are all the rules for tonight. I do hope it didn't overwhelm you enough to cancel on us. Once your job is done, you will be paid the agreed upon amount. Cannot wait for your arrival. Letter from my son, taped to the fridge one morning. Dear Mom and Dad, I am sorry you had to find out this way, but my departure had to be secret. I am alright. I'm not sure where to begin. I am off to fight on the front line of the war that I hope you never know about. It is not a fight of bombs and bullets. It is, however, even more deadly. Something is coming for us. I can tell you that. Be on your guard, Stock up your emergency kits, and if possible, move far away from major cities. I warn you to do this because I expect we shall lose the war that I am off to fight in. And when that day comes, I don't want to think about that day. Just be ready. I know that I am being frustratingly vague, and that's because I have to be. The people I am going with must operate in secrecy, or else worldwide panic would set in. Win or lose, know that I love you. Worry not about my absence. The talents for which I was recruited are rare, and given that I risk losing my life or a fate far worse, they have generously compensated the ones I leave behind, that being you. You will receive a very large check in the mail soon. Use it to pay my student loans, and buy supplies while money still has some value. If we ever see each other again, then it means the threat is averted and we can live our lives again. More likely, however, is that I will fall. Even in victory the cost will be enormous, and I am prepared to never see my friends or loved ones again. I hope you never find out what has set its eyes upon our world. But if you do find out, know that I gave my last full measure of devotion to stop it. So will millions more. Some advice I hope you will never need: teach each other detailed phrases or sentences, complex passwords, to identify each other. Do not obey the intrusive thoughts. Your sudden desire to kill people is not normal. Avoid crowded places and cities. Practice disciplined mental exercises and critical thinking. Sharpen your mind and control your thoughts. These will be the greatest defense against what is coming. Stay alive.
My students submitted the most disturbing living history project I've ever seen. One of my least favorite parts about being a middle school history teacher is the bullshit living history assignments we give at the end of every school year. Kids are supposed to sit with their grandparents and videotape, voice record, or transcribe their oldest memories for posterity. I have been doing this for 17 years, and when I collected the projects this time around, I assumed they would be as dull, if not duller than usual. This had not been a particularly bright class, so I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and prepared for a long night of I only owned 2 pairs of pants when I was your age and my brother got beat with a newspaper for hitting a baseball into a neighbor's yard. And of course, these projects were peppered with innocent, old-person comments that were so horribly sexist and racist you just had to laugh. Now, I had a girl in my class whom I will call Olivia. She was pudgy, quiet, and proved herself a consistent B student. I expected her project to be as unremarkable as her, and perhaps that's why I was so profoundly disturbed by what I witnessed that night. Olivia had submitted 2 discs for some reason, so I began with the one marked interview. My screen hiccuped twice before a grainy image of a living room came into view. The place was a hoarder's hell. Olivia was curled up in an armchair clutching a notebook and looking like a scared animal. Across from her sat a man with a somber countenance, smoking a cigarette and staring at her expectantly. "Go ahead," a woman's voice whispered from behind the camera. Olivia's owlish eyes flashed towards the screen, then back to the man. "I am here with my great-uncle Stephen," she began almost inaudibly. "He is going to tell us about his oldest memories from being in the army." Great-uncle Stephen looked like he'd rather be in a goddamn trench at the moment, but he waited patiently for the questions to begin. Not surprisingly, Olivia read verbatim from the suggested question sheet I had handed out to the students. He answered her curtly. Once or twice I heard her mother whisper, "Speak up, Olivia," from behind the camera. Typical, boring shit. So I was intrigued when Olivia set down the notebook and asked, "Did you like being in the army?" That was totally off script. Great-uncle Stephen emitted a chain smoker's wheeze. "Nope. Glad to get out of my town though." "Where did you go?" "Balkans." "Uh-huh," she said. I doubted she knew what the Balkans were, and my suspicion was confirmed when she asked, "Was Bacchus very different from here?" "Yes." Mom cleared her throat from behind the camera, perhaps encouraging Great-uncle Stephen to be a little more forthcoming. But Olivia seemed genuinely interested. "Uncle Stephen," she asked, "what is your very worst memory from the army?" The old man crushed his cigarette in the ashtray and then slowly lifted himself out of his chair. "I'll be back," he mumbled. The camera cut off. When the screen flashed back on, everything was the same except Great-uncle Stephen had several pieces of paper in plastic sleeves laid atop all the crap sitting on his coffee table. One he held in his hand. "I was a kid when I enlisted," he said, looking at Olivia. "Your brother's age," he told her. Olivia nodded. "I never saw combat. Both of my deployments were to cities in Eastern Europe that had been destroyed by civil wars. Everything was a mess. I felt like a janitor for fuck's saw." Mom coughed. Great-uncle Stephen sighed and looked at his paper. "My unit was assigned to a school that had been obliterated by all the violence. Broken windows, caved-in rooms, and for some reason, the part that got to me the most was that the school had been like this for years before we got there. No one had lifted a finger to fix it. I saw kids walk by it on their way to go beg for money or whatever shit they did." The camera dipped towards the floor as I heard Mom whisper harshly at Great-uncle Stephen. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it wasn't hard to imagine. "Do you want to hear this goddamn story or not?" I heard him bark in response. "Then you better let me tell it how I want." "Mom," Olivia chimed. "Please stop interrupting. Are you presenting this in front of the class?" "No, Mom, we're just handing it in to the teacher." "I'm sure he's heard the word shit before." Great-uncle Stephen contributed helpfully. I wasn't a he as a matter of fact, but other than that the statement was accurate. The camera was lifted and after a couple of blurry focus adjustments, the shot was the same as before. "Oh, I'm talking too much anyway," he grumbled. He lifted the piece of paper in his hand close to his face. "In the basement, I found this letter. I didn't know what it said, but I had a buddy of mine translate it. So I'm gonna read it now, and then I'll tell you what I saw in that basement." A chill ran down my spine. Mom zoomed into Great-uncle Stephen and his letter. His palsied hands trembled as he held up the paper. This is what he read. "Dear sir, I never loved my country. So many of these skirmishes are born from patriotism, a power struggle for the shards of a once great empire, but I do not care what name my home has on a map. This fighting is senseless and I stay as far away from it as I can. It was not these attacks and disorganized violence that took the lives of my wife and child. It was illness. Mercifully, it happened quickly for the baby. Nadia suffered for longer. I watched in horror knowing I could do nothing for them. My only solace is that I was there for them every step of the way. I stopped going to work one day and no one came after me. I doubt they noticed I was gone. Since the school was simply across a field, visible from my window, it would have been easy to go for a few hours each day and come home quickly to care for them. But what was the point? All I did was clean floors. I was as useless to the world as I was to my family. I tried to take Nadia to the hospital, but the journey was too long and taxing. I brought her home and she died that night, after Nadia and the baby were gone. Well, I don't remember much. I didn't leave my hovel, barely ate and slept, thought many times of taking my own life. Tempting though it was, I felt paralyzed by my own helplessness. The one thing that kept me sane was my radio. I never turned it off once, even though I didn't listen to the words being said. In fact, the channel I got the clearest was in English, which I don't speak a lick of. But the voices, the music, and the true knowledge that life existed beyond this violent city sustained me. I have no idea how long passed before I saw the light of day again. I was dizzy from hunger, so finding food was my priority. My radio came with me, of course. Since I first hold myself up, it has gone everywhere with me. It talks to me as I sleep and as I wake. I don't know what it's saying, but I know I would die without it. Once I had some water and food, it occurred to me that the only thing left to do was go back to work. So I did. The following morning, I simply returned to the school where I was a janitor and got back to work. Nobody made a big deal out of it. Like I said, Nadia had been sick for a long time, and those who worked at the school knew it. I appreciate that no one had pestered me to come back to work during the hardest days of my life. The teachers never said much to me, but we smiled at each other in the halls, and that mutual respect was perhaps the reason I decided to come back at all. The place had gone to the dogs without me, so I simply grabbed my broom and rags from my closet and set to cleaning. Everyone is grateful to have me back, I know. And the best part is that nobody minds my radio. I bring it with me everywhere and keep the volume low enough not to disrupt the students. No one has ever complained. In fact, I suspect they like it. The schoolhouse is not very big, but does require a lot of maintenance. The floors are always sticky and stained, so I spend most of my time mopping. Kids make messes. I guess that's why I'm still in business. Sometimes I have to move things around to make sure I get every spot on the floor beautiful and clean, but I take pride in that. And the repairs. The school always needs tune-ups here and there, and I am happy to help. Some days I'm reconstructing a desk that broke as I whistle along with the radio. Other times I handle more serious, structural issues. Days when I have work like this, I feel truly instrumental, like a cog in a larger machine. How could this school survive without me? It took me a long time, but I once again feel that I have purpose. There is a larder behind the school that is full of preserved food. In lieu of payment, I am allowed to take as much food as I need. That arrangement is fine. What would I do with money anyway? I used to bring the food back to my home, just one field away from the school, but when I started sleeping in the basement, no one seemed to notice. This school is special to me and I cannot leave it unguarded. When I am besieged with memories of my wife and baby, I turn up the volume on the radio to drown out such thoughts. It works for me every time, except this morning. Because this morning, I woke up to dead silence. I frantically examined the radio to see what had happened. I honestly cannot tell you how many days in a row I have been using it. Did it simply live out its life and die naturally? I have spent the entire day trying to fix it. Most of this time, I have been crying. I am losing my mind without it. I have given myself until sundown. If I cannot fix it by then, I am going to take my life. I am writing this because the sunlight is starting to die and I know what my fate shall be. I have thought about taking one last walk through the halls of my school, saying goodbye to the students and teachers. I know I will be missed, but I cannot bring myself to leave this room. I cannot go anywhere knowing that my radio is dead in here. There are no more tears in me. It feels now like I can't catch my breath. I vomited what little food I had in my stomach and I am growing dizzy again, like I did after Nadia died. I am not long for this world, but before I take my life, I have closed the door to this room and stuck a chair beneath the handle. It is the only room in the basement and has a small casement that lets in just enough light for me to see what I am doing. If anyone is kind enough to come looking for me, they should not be met with this gruesome sight. Perhaps they will see the door is blocked, smell my rotting body, and simply forget I ever existed. But I have placed both my radio and this note outside the door. Kind sir, if you are reading this, I have one humble request, please fix it. Save my radio. It did not deserve to die in its sleep and I am ashamed that I cannot revive it. Now I am ready to join Nadia and little Ludmilla in heaven. I hope this school can find another janitor who loves and cares for it the way I do. The hour is now. Do not forget my radio. Stanislav. When Mom zoomed back out, Olivia had tears in her eyes. Thank you for sharing, Uncle Stephen, Mom said, her voice choked. I think we have enough. Wait, Olivia chirped. He said there's more. What did you find? Before Great Uncle Stephen could open his mouth, the image disappeared. My jaw dropped. Was that it? What did Great Uncle Stephen see? I promptly remembered that there was a second disc. This one was unmarked, but I hoped it contained the rest of the interview. There was no video, only audio. The voice that started up was Olivia's. Hi, Miss Jarity. I'm sorry about my mom, but she refused to record the rest of what my uncle was saying. But I asked him to continue and secretly recorded the story as a voice memo on my phone. I remember you said earlier this year that history is written by the people who win wars. She sucked in a breath and commenced crying. But everyone's history is important, even if they are sad, pathetic people, and even if they never won a single thing in their life. I haven't slept through the night since I finished this project, but you have to hear what my uncle has to say. There were tears in my eyes, too. The sincerity of her words was beautiful. I was also flattered that she had remembered some trite phrase I threw around because it was what my history teacher said to me. Before I got too sappy over it, the audio began again. Fine, came Mom's frustrated voice. If you want to hear the rest of the story, fine, but this is not appropriate for a school project. Let me finish, Great Uncle Stephen snapped. If it's too much for you, help yourself to a snack in the kitchen. But Olivia wants to know what happened. I heard her mother mumble something and walk away. Olivia and her uncle were alone. I imagined her looking at him expectantly. So did you find the radio? Or did it get ruined when the school got blown up? He rasped and I heard the distinct click of a lighter. The letter, he began slowly, had a date on it. What date? She inquired hungrily. It was dated 2 weeks before we started rebuilding the school. Didn't you say the school had been destroyed like 2 years ago? Yes, replied Great Uncle Stephen. It had been. There was silence as I felt goosebumps on my arms. The images that came to my mind were almost too overwhelming to express, but Great Uncle Stephen put them into words effortlessly. Clearly he had spent his whole life thinking about it. This man, this Stanislav, went to a vandalized, falling apart schoolhouse and cleaned up blood and rubble like it was spilled drinks and dust. He smiled at dead bodies in the hallway and believed they were smiling back at him because they liked his radio. He moved around corpses so he could sweep the ground under them. The roof was half collapsed, so when it rained, he must have gotten soaking wet but was so oblivious that he didn't even feel a thing. I could hear Olivia crying steadily. I found the larder he was talking about. It was all pickled, preserved food that probably tasted like shit. Most of the stuff was moldy. Did you see the dead body? Yes, hanging from the ceiling, but still amazingly lifelike. He wasn't rotting away. This hadn't happened years ago. Did he look peaceful? She asked, a chord of desperation in her voice. Couldn't tell you. The smell was rank, and his face was blue and his eyes were bulging. Like this, I imagined him demonstrating. And the radio, Olivia wept. I heard Great Uncle Stephen take a long drag of his cigarette. It was there, all right, and it was still on.